Hello, and welcome to Movies We Dig, the podcast about film, antiquity, and everything in between. I'm Christy Vogler.
I'm Colin McCormick.
And I'm Zoe Thomas, stepping in for Lige today.
And today we are back to talk about the final season of Blood of Zeus with some very special guests, very special to us, especially. So once again, we are blessed by the gods to be joined by the creators of Blood of Zeus, Charley and Vlas Parlapanides. Thank you both once again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having us. Our pleasure.
But, I mean, they came to us with a very special surprise and invited a few more, hopefully familiar voices to fans of the show. Please give a warm welcome to Derek Phillips, the voice of Heron, and Elias Toufexis, the voice of Seraphim. I know it's weird when we don't have the audience applause ready, but
We'll add more. I'd like raucous, like people firing guns in the air. Like
we'll add the sound effects.
Put that in
Amazing.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you all for joining us to talk about this final season and the series as a whole. Like, this is really exciting for our podcast in particular. So with that, we have a lot of questions for everyone. And I think maybe we'll start with the easiest one. How does it feel to come to the end of the series? I say that's like it's easy. I think it's just the conclusion. And then since, the two main protagonists are Heron and Seraphim, what do you want the audience to take away from their story as individuals, as brothers, as kind of the heroes of this series? So I'll open that up for everyone.
They say, and Charlie usually quotes this, you never finish a project, you abandon it. And so there's some truth to that. And we know what that feels like because you always want to, tell this story or you want to plus that or you want to do, but it comes a time where you just have to say goodbye. We're going to miss this incredible group of people. The actors, especially, just brought the characters to life in a way that we couldn't even imagine. And it was just a sheer delight to work with both Derek and Elias and with the rest of the cast as well. When you hear, the words, for the first time and the way they interpret them, it just really is so rewarding and gratifying. And they brought so much to the roles. And they're going to talk about it. And I love, Derek, what you say with regards. Heron was a difficult part to play, and you brought a certain strength to him. You made sure that he wasn't whiny, and that is in the performance. And I'm glad you did that. And obviously Elias too. He has all different kind of shades and colors, in addition to the anger, in addition to all the other things that are evident. So we just feel blessed, really blessed that we had the people that we had to work on the show, the actors that we had. We made some very good friendships, and what we hope people come away with, or what I hope people come away with, I hope they come away with a show that was entertaining, that they enjoyed, that made them laugh, made them cry, and hopefully, shared with them some good messages, the message of forgiveness, the dangers of anger, and then hopefully the beauty of self-sacrificing love, which is what's encapsulated for me in the last season.
I think anytime you do any kind of show, whether it's animated or on camera, it's always a bit bittersweet when it comes to an end. I'm glad that this one got a legit ending. Sometimes you work on stuff that doesn't ever get resolution, so at least we got to tell our story. It's bittersweet because I really did develop some great relationships with these guys. I mean, it doesn't take much for Charley or Vlas they texted me earlier today and were like, "Hey man, are you available at 4?" And the reality is anytime these guys text me going forward, it's going to be like, yeah, I'm available. If I'm available, I'm available because I just love working with them so much. Love working with Elias so much. Great friendships that were created on this. And these two guys, Charley and Vlas, are just fantastic. I've said to other actor friends of mine, if you ever have an opportunity to work for them, I highly recommend it. They're the most positive people you'll ever work for in the business. I never had a session where I left Blood of Zeus not feeling like I was 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And that's a rarity in this business as well. So it's bittersweet, but I mean, even just an opportunity to get together and just shoot the shit again today is fun to see these guys and talk to these guys and kind of have a one last hoorah, as it were.
Nice.
Yeah, it's true. It's a cliche, but the friends we've made along the way, cliche is true. I made all these great relationships with people that, yeah, like Derek was saying, I could count on if I need, I need 5 minutes of your time. I know Derek will answer. I know Charley and Vlas will answer for advice or help or anything, and just to hang out. So that's really my favorite thing. It is bittersweet for sure. It's bittersweet. I could do it, man. I could play that character forever. I would be fine with. Oh, we're going into season 33 of Seraphim's journey. Now he's working in an office or something. I don't care.
Yeah.
Seraphim applies to be a CPA.
I'm pretty sure I've seen that fanfic. So
That would be a good Seraphim, like in the office, like a CPA. It's like, oh,
yeah. One thing I will say, and not to say that our show is a great show, we're proud of it, but shows that really work that are great. Like when you think of The Sopranos, you think of James Gandolfini. When you think of Breaking Bad, you think of Walter White and that performance. And The Shield, you picture Vic Mackey and Michael Chiklis. What was just great with our show is that fundamentally this show is about these two brothers. And both Derek and Elias, they brought their A game. Their performances, they just crushed it. And I really think for something to work, you need that. And we were just lucky. They're both just super talented. And like Derek said, I'm glad we didn't end up, especially in this world of streaming, you could end up like a book, then all of a sudden you get halfway through and the pages are blank. Like at least there's a conclusion to this part of the story, and we can go out and feel like we did justice to these two brothers. And a huge part of that was just that Derek and Elias just killed it. And so for that, we're very grateful.
And we always want to work with them. That just goes without saying. Future projects, absolutely. And, Derek said, that they worked, or we worked for them. No one worked for us. We worked with each other together. This was a collaborative effort. And we always appreciated when they came in, they had good ideas and they wanted to try to do things a certain way. And, we live by the mantra, as they know, best idea wins. And no word or dialogue is too precious. And we were just blessed to have two great actors contribute and bring their A game.
A lot of that has to do with, because Derek started in theater and I started in theater. And the mantra in theater is the group. It's the troupe, right? It's like, what is best for the troupe? There's always going to be like people fighting, like, I'm the lead. But the best plays come out as where this is about the troupe. You get your big moment, and everybody's best idea wins, like Vlas was saying. And so when you get a project like that as an actor, you get a project where you realize that there's literally no ego involved other than trying to make it good.
Yeah.
And sorry, I've said this before. I'll say it again. Derek, I'm sick of saying this to you, but I'm going to say it because we're on a podcast. My favorite performance in the show is Derek's performance because it's the most difficult to pull off. And he does such a wonderful job in it. And there's, between he and I, he's the lead. I guess I'd be the second lead. There's zero jealousy. I want him to be great. And I want everybody to be great. And I want the writing to be great. And the fact that we can just collaborate in that way and go, there's some changes I made, but I suggested that we ended up making, but they were very minor. The writing was pretty much spot on. I remember one specifically, I changed the word bugs to insects. Like that's a good example of like I have the most amount of change that I put into this thing. And in terms of like motivations and stuff, we would all have discussions and stuff like that, of course. But every actor wants that, and you don't always get it. A lot of time, you're just like, no, just say your lines and go home. And nobody wants to do that. We want the troupe. It's all about the troupe.
But it makes sense, right? Like Seraphim would say insects, right?
Echo what Elias is saying and what Charley and Vlas was saying. It's ego is the death of art, and I feel like everyone that worked on this kind of lived by that mantra. And just to toot Elias's horn as well. I mean, one of the things that was so cool about this show is that you got to see all three sides of everybody. Elias in the first season, Seraphim is this like big evil. And then by the second season, you see why he's the way he is, So we got to see all sides of these characters. And that's really a testament to Charley and Vlas's writing.
On that kind of note, I'm sorry, Christy, I'm like already going off script, but like,
You're fine.
So with these two co-leads, I would think of Heron and Seraphim as very like co-leads to the script, but they're there's a mix in the story of sort of known quantities, right? Like Zeus and Hera and, Hades, who have been depicted before, and people come in with, both, I imagine, like when you're prepping for a role, but when you're watching it, you come in with ideas and other versions. But Heron and Seraphim, these are original, right? So I wanted to ask both the writers and the performers, like, they're coming at an original character sort of set against, gods and heroes from myth and things like that. How did you approach that?
I think one thing that is always important is that no matter what, and this was a lesson we learned from John Hurt on Immortals. He was talking with Luke Evans, and we were up in Montreal making that movie. And Luke was like, "Listen, we're playing the same character. You're playing old Zeus. I'm playing young Zeus. Like, what were you thinking? What's your approach?" He's like, "Don't think about any of that God stuff. You're a king. You're a lawgiver. You're a father. Play those, focus on those." So even though Heron is the hero and that's kind of his role, he is these other things. He's a son, a friend, he's all these other things. And I think that's what you focus on, and you look at the interpersonal relationships, because anytime you construct a story, it's always about what does the character want, and that's affected by the people around them. And then, well, who are they? And just you break it down to the more minuscule ideas instead of looking at it as this big thing. I don't know. That's how it works for me. I don't know what.
Yeah, I would say, just to piggyback off that, we spent a lot of time on what the character wants, and and that we didn't come up with that. That Sorkin came up with that, and that came according to him from the poetics
from Aristotle.
Yeah,
always
comes back to the
Greeks, guys. Come on,
always comes back to the Greeks.
Just saying. And then obviously, once you find out what the character wants, how they go about getting it truly defines their character. And Seraphim's the perfect example of that. So I think once you define what the characters want, then the fun part of the storytelling is that what this character wants conflicts with this character wants. And then, they get into,
and what are they willing to do to get it? And
how far are they willing to go about? Yes.
What's interesting, I mean, that's your process as a writer, and it's very similar as an actor. I've always said that if I was ever going to write an acting book, it would be 3 things. I mean, look, there's more to it than that, but basically I need to know the given circumstances. I need to know where I am. I need to know what has happened beforehand. I need to know who I'm in the scene with. From that point on, I need to know what I want in that scene. What do I want? And once I know that, then all I have to do is react off of the other person that I'm acting across from. And those 3 things, if you do those 3 things, you can do the classics, you can do anything. But to take it to another point, I think there are pitfalls along the way. In a character like Heron, we talked earlier about, the pitfall of him being whiny. I remember, as a young actor doing and seeing Chekhov plays and just hating Chekhov until I finally saw a production where they weren't playing the 5th act in the beginning. So instead of a character going, "What's it like in Russia?" going, "What's it like in Russia?" They're excited about going to Russia. They're excited about what the prospects are. They don't know that the end is a tragedy at the beginning. So when you play the tragedy in the beginning, and that, guys, it goes across every genre. I did a production of The Glass Menagerie 20 years ago, and I played the gentleman caller. I don't come in until after intermission, basically. And I'm sitting there backstage, and I'm watching from the wings. In the first night, the audience is laughing hysterically. And I'm going, "Oh, God, they don't know that this is a tragedy." Exactly. So when the rug gets pulled out from under him in the 5th act, and Jim kisses Laura, and he goes, "I shouldn't have done that," you heard their hearts drop. They don't know the play the way that we know the play. And even the ones that know the play the way we know the play are always hoping for that ending to be different this time around. How many times have you watched Romeo and Juliet and hoped that maybe this time, if the production is done well, it draws you in and it makes you go, maybe this time it works out. Maybe this time it works out, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
But that's what a good production does, and that's what I think that a good writer does. You can't play the 5th act in the beginning.
Yeah. We were talking about this with Hadestown, right? Where
Hadestown.
or if it, why and I think Andre DeShields says it at the end of the play. He's like, why do we keep coming back? We know, we've known this story for 5,000 years, give or take, right? And but that hope, Derek, that you're saying, like, that it might be different, it could be different, the possibility for restoration or whatever.
Well, and I think there's something we forget as scholars who've been, like, I've been obsessed with Greek myths since I was a kid. is that we forget that people are always discovering these stories for the first time, and like the importance of telling them again and again and again is like there's always someone new to hear them, which
Yeah.
is really cool to think about too.
We love Tennessee Williams too. Totally going on a tangent here, and he wrote an essay, "The Catastrophe of Success," which we absolutely love. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but basically, how adversity shapes us all. And we say adversity is the fire our souls are forged in, and it's very true. And once you take that adversity out of the equation, it changes you. And let me tell you something. We've had plenty of adversity. I'm like, I don't need so much adversity. Please take some of this off our plate. But it does. It affects you, and hopefully, if you funnel it, it can make you stronger. It can break people. We've seen it break people, sadly. Or it can make you stronger. It can make you come out shining and make you a better version of yourself. Because ultimately, we believe that we're all here to grow psychologically, spiritually, in some way, and you don't grow on a bed of roses.
I've always said fear is a great motivator. I think Elias can attest to this. We both had an opportunity to play Hamlet, and one of the questions you get after you get done with the performance of Hamlet, there's always somebody goes, "How'd y'all memorize all them lines?" And I think the best answer I can come up with is fear. Fear is a massively wonderful motivator.
Not the Marlon Brando thing where I just tape the script all over
Sometimes
everything, on the
that.
props, on the other actors,
I did that.
on myself.
I do that a lot, believe it or not. Especially, I don't know if you do this, Derek, but like on The Expanse and on Star Trek, because I had a lot of technical jargon that it just never sits in my head. So I would write it out, I'd stick it on the cameraman's shoulder, and I'd just read it right off of his shoulder, because there's no way I'm going to memorize. Because my character has to know what he's talking about, not look like I'm trying to remember what the words are.
Yeah, and you've got to be able to spit that jargon out rapid fire.
So I literally had post-it notes on the camera op's shoulder, just read it right off of there. So it's not as uncommon as you think. But when I played Hamlet, I did not have that luxury.
No.
We have to just comment. There was an actor, we're not going to name who, on Immortals. And it was funny. It was during the press section of the movie. And they asked him, what was the hardest thing about production? We saw how, everyone was so fit and how physical it was. And he was like, that was easy. The hardest part was reading my lines when they had the smoke machine, and you could see him. He's like this, his lights here, his lights there, but there was so much smoke he couldn't see his lines.
Absolutely, Mickey Rourke. Absolutely, it was Mickey Rourke.
And the thing is, I'll be honest with you too, though. When you get older, it's not as easy as it used to be.
Yeah.
I remember doing a production of The Winter's Tale years ago, and there was a gentleman that I was working with who was playing the shepherd. I played Florizel in The Winter's Tale close to 30 years ago. And this guy I was working with, his name was Larry Dwyer, and he was fantastic, so good, so talented, and I learned so much from him. But he had trouble with the lines occasionally. And I remember there was one day we got done and we're walking off stage, and he goes, well, I thought that went really well. And I go, Larry, we skipped a page. And he goes, did we now? But he was so talented, man. When he was on, he was on. And I just remember thinking at 24 years old, like that's going to be me one of these days. Hopefully I'm still as good as he was at that point. But
I want to give it a chance. Zoe, you had a really good question that I wanted to give you a chance to voice. So please go.
Which one of my questions? I'm
generational trauma.
Okay, good. I was like, is it one of the
is
it one of the crackpot questions, or is it my one serious academic contribution?
Your one serious academic one. We're going to start tough and then ease our way from there.
So one thing, and I believe we talked about this, Charley and Vlas, in the very first season when we got the chance to interview you after that very first podcast episode came out. I'm really curious about how your experience as sort of the children of immigrants from Greece, or grandchildren. I'm so sorry if I'm...
Our mom was born and raised in Greece. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And one of the themes that I really picked out of season 3 was the role that generational trauma plays in the characters' behaviors and their wants and their needs, and specifically how our heroes, both Heron and Seraphim, how they do or do not manage to sort of break those cycles of abuse and generational trauma. And I was curious how much this theme resonated with you all and your experiences as children of immigrants, as a child of an immigrant, and or how that played further into the development of the show. And we can also open this up to you, Derek and Elias, as well, and your sort of approaches to that as actors too.
You know what's very interesting, Zoe, and I think I told you this on the first season. I always love your name, Zoe. Zoe is life in Greek, and
Yeah.
but it's funny you talk about generational trauma. So both sides of our family were ethnic Greeks from Smyrna that escaped during the burning of Smyrna in 1922. And so our mother's side ended up going to Patra, and they stayed there. Our father's side went to Patra, and they said, well, we can be poor and refugees in Greece, or we can be poor and refugees in America, and they continued on to America. But both families knew each other. But one thing that really kind of struck us is that on our mother's side, our proyeya, our great grandmother, she was 19. She was married and pregnant, and her husband was marched to Ankara. And what she discovered later from one of the villagers from her Horyo was that there was a point where he couldn't bear the march anymore. He collapsed. He asked for water, and a Turkish officer shot him in the head. And then on our father's side, our grandmother, his mother, Arya Andonia, she was 13, and her father rallied a bunch of the men saying, hey, we need to gather up as many people as we can, buy time for the women and children to get down to the harbor, to get on boats and hold off the Turkish army. And he ended up getting captured, and they hung him from the tree in front of their house. And so we grew up hearing all these stories as little kids. For some reason, they felt it was like worth sharing with us. But what was interesting is that I think when something like that happens to you, you break either one of two ways. You either harden, or you try and find meaning in other ways. Arya Sophia, like everything was a miracle, everything was a blessing. You would have no idea she had gone through this hardship. Arya Andonia, she was like, our dad always said, she was like built like a Sherman tank, and she was as tough as a Sherman tank. And when she would drive by the Turkish deli in New Brunswick, she would spit on the ground or spit out the window and say, Skili Turki, the dogs, these Turkish dogs, because they killed her father, and she never forgot it. And
they tried raping them.
And her and Arthea, her sister. And so, it's kind of strange. I think about it. I would never tell, we have kids. We would never, I don't think, tell our kids like these stories of beheadings and the priest whose tongue they cut out, and he was wandering around. And I remember these stories vividly. I guess in some ways it just made us very aware that there is tragedy in life. And it's definitely part of the Greek culture. We're very fatalistic, and it's in all our works, as you guys know, as you study them. It's just in our DNA, I guess, a little bit.
It has a massive impact, because the other thing, in addition to everything, Charlie just said, to piggyback off that, we have great empathy with anyone that is marginalized, anyone that is made to feel less solely because of their ethnicity, solely because of, who they are. And so you just have great empathy, because we know what that feeling's like, not exactly, we didn't experience what our grandmother experienced and our grandmothers and grandfathers, but it just left a mark. You can't unhear it or just not think about it in some way. And it shows the human condition, that we're all capable of great evil, and we're all capable of, doing something that's really loving and just, it's really something where you're just like, wow, like people can be on the different ends of that spectrum, where it's eye-opening, where again, to treat people with that type of cruelty, and to do it, to millions of people.
Yeah.
It really leaves a mark on you. And again, just great empathy for anyone that is marginalized. And that has been something that's been part of our life. And to break that cycle of violence, that's another thing. And I'm glad, it is a great question. We did a lot of research for characters, and we've seen how abuse kind of, again, trickles on down, and it's very sad. And to break out of that cycle of violence is difficult. So it's just also a reminder we have children for us to be the best parents that we can be, and to be as loving and as understanding and as patient as we can be. It's helped me in that regard. So I'm curious what the guys have to say about it, but it is a great question.
Well, I'm half Jewish, and I remember being 6 or 7 years old, and I was at my cousin's house, and they're 100% Jewish, and I can't remember who, if it was my brother or me or one of my siblings made a joke about the Holocaust, and my aunt overheard it. And my aunt came in and read us a ration of shit. Do you even know what the Holocaust was? And I was so little, I didn't really know much about it. We'd heard things, if I was acting out, my dad would be like, "Hey, Adolf, take it down a notch," things like that. But I didn't know anything really about the Holocaust until that moment. And I remember to this day my aunt crying in my cousin's room and explaining what the Holocaust was and what exactly happened. And I remember from that moment, it was kind of one of these things where there was an immediate fascination with how people can get to that place, even to the point where my cousin and I, same cousin, were in Berlin. Same cousin who wanted more nudity in Blood of Zeus, by the way. I told you guys this.
This guy.
We were in Berlin together, and both of us went to the concentration camp in Sachsenhausen. And it's kind of led to a lifetime fascination with how things like that can happen, how we allow things like that to happen, why we allow things like that to happen. And not to get too political, but when you look at what's going on in Gaza right now, I have family members that are Jewish that firmly believe they should turn it into a parking lot, bomb the whole entire place, let God sort them out, kind of thing. And then there's other members of my family that look at it from a different perspective. It's complicated. It's all very complicated, and I don't want to get into touch on that subject at the
We
moment.
get political all the time, and I've taught a class about looking at the history of mass killing events, starting with the Trojan War, and then doing the Spanish conquest, and doing the Rwandan genocide. And that was one of the things I explored with my students is like what drives people collectively to just turn on another group of people. And it goes back to something you said earlier, Derek, about fear. It's like fear can be a healthy thing if
Yeah.
you can overcome it. But other times, fear of losing the ones we love, fear of losing our home and things like that, fear of the person will do something to you if you don't do it to them first is what drives a
Yes.
lot of some of the
Yeah.
most horrible acts. And then
Yeah.
we can say it was like, but it was for our own protection. It was for protecting my family. And it becomes really difficult to untangle those as we see with current issues. Like, where do you draw the line of, hey, we're protecting ourselves versus you are just causing the same amount of harm that was caused to you, and we have to break the cycle now.
And it's interesting that we're talking about the cycle of violence because I actually worked on a game called The Last of Us in The Last of Us Part 2. And the whole entire
I've heard of
concept
it.
of that game
Yeah.
is the cycle of violence and that cycle of violence coming to an end. And
Yeah.
Neil Druckmann, who is Israeli, was writing the second part of that game about the conflict in Palestine.
Oh, wow. I never knew that, Derek.
100%. Yeah. My character in that game is a direct result. He's the impetus that sets everything in motion, that sets the character of Abby on her
revenge.
quest for revenge, you know.
Yeah.
But I can
Yeah.
see how your grandmother who would spit on the Turkish, I get it. But I also understand the other perspective, the thank God we're alive. We made it out of
Yeah.
that.
Let's say one grandmother was more Seraphim, the other one was more Heron.
Yeah.
But
You know what I
also,
do use? Sorry, Vlas, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, and then I want to.
I was just going to say that I do. The one thing that's interesting about being an actor and playing things like this, one of the things that's interesting is, you have to remember how blessed we are to live in North America in this time period.
Yeah.
Like I look at my dad he was born in Athens. He moved when he was 5 because, my grandmother wanted to get out of there because she had all sorts of stories like your yeah. My papu also was a soldier. And then he had a life in North America. No Great War, no real, outside of everyday life, no real tragedy in life like our grandmothers experienced. So how do you tap into that as an actor when you don't experience it? And the truth is you have to learn to be grateful that you haven't experienced it. And I try to tell my kids that, and or when I get stressed about money or some ridiculous thing, it's like, no, we have each other, we have our health, we don't have to worry about getting blown up, we don't have to worry about these things. But it is challenging. I don't know how you feel, Derek, but it is challenging to, how do I talk about the cycle of violence when I have loving parents, loving grandparents, I have loving kids, I have nothing to relate to that because I've been so fortunate. So it's interesting being an actor in that sense, where it's like I got to tap into this tragedy of this character, this cycle of violence, but I've never experienced it in life. Those are the things that make acting, for me, so fascinating of a career choice, because I have to tap into these things and I've not experienced them. I also get to be, in space and stuff.
Is an exercise in radical empathy, right? Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
We all have it in us, though, because it's happened throughout history. So it's there and it's accessible, and fear is weaponized at times. And obviously, we're all capable of finding that and going there. Sorry, but you were going to say something.
No, I just to piggyback off of what everyone's saying, and this
That's
is
the fourth time you've said that, Russ.
Yeah. It's just that kind of good group, and it all flows in the right direction, because where I'm going to go with this, it's something that Charley wrote at the end of season 2. And I remember when he first told me this idea of forgiveness and that the gods had to be taught. I'm like, I don't know, bro. I don't know if that's going to work.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that I love most, and it's the thing that I feel is, I'm so glad that it was encapsulated in season 2 and that it's there, because I really do feel that we need to be able to forgive each other. If we don't, we will devour each other and we will end up in a horrible place. So yes, like our one grandmother, was not good at forgiving, but we also need to learn and cherry pick the good things from our parents, from our grandparents.
Sure.
She was unable to forgive, but it's important for us to be able to forgive and to teach that to our children, because that's the only way we can kind of move forward, I think, as people. We have to forgive. Doesn't mean we all have to agree, but we have to respect each other's opinions and just have civil discourse and an exchange of ideas, instead of like canceling someone or destroying someone or not being able to forgive, because, man, that does not end up in a good place.
No.
Could you imagine the strength it took Heron to forgive what Seraphim did? Even like, it's funny, but I'm being serious. It's like the strength that it would take that character to forgive the murderer of his mother, because he sees that he's trying to make amends for it, is incredible. It's what makes those characters so strong, is that forgiveness. Yeah, it's true.
But that's one of the things, going back to what you were talking about, Elias, like that's one of the things that's so great about being an actor. And I think the reason why we get the opportunity, we're forced to. I mean, I'm literally paid to do this. I get it to I get cast in something and I go, I don't understand why this guy works the way he does. I don't understand why his brain jumps to this conclusion, or why he's this quick to action, or so I have to try and figure out why this guy thinks the way he does. And I do think that if we as a culture and as people spend a little bit more time trying to figure out why the other side thought the way they did, we probably understand them a lot better, and there'd be a lot less war and violence and
conflict.
I've certainly played a lot of murderers in my time.
Yeah.
Mostly what I play. Mostly murderers and criminals.
Yeah.
And I've not done either, as far as I know.
I was going to say that we had some choice words for Netflix in our coverage of season 3, and we'll go into that later. But like overall, it really felt like a satisfying end for Seraphim and Heron, especially ending up in the Elysian fields with their mother. And the mother's like, there's not even anything to forgive, which reaffirms that, like, Heron made the right choice in forgiving, because his mother so quickly and easily forgave as well. And so I felt like that ending was really solid. And what I love about Greek mythology is like it's always tackled really tough topics. It doesn't shy away from it. It doesn't shy away from the violence. It doesn't shy away from the harm done to people that we might view as evil or villainous, no matter what. And I think what's hard about some modern trends, I was reading about this recently, is like as people are creating content in all these new forms, there's this fear of demonetization. So there's an adoption of terms that aren't really addressing how horrible some of these things are, how much they are a part of human history. And if we can't really bring ourselves to name those things and talk about them and present them in stories, can we actually build up the empathy we need to deal with our own real life problems? So I guess I'm curious
Chrissy,
about that.
that's fascinating. When you think of Antigone, like what is just, who's right, the king or the gods, and who deserves a burial, and and now if you say certain words, like people will get demonetized. I've never even thought of that. That is fascinating.
I remember the first time I saw it happen. I was doing a production of Mice and Men about 20 something years ago. We had a talkback session. This is at Dallas Theater Center. And there's a character in the show named Crooks. He's a black character. Crooks is the one guy who doesn't live in the bunkhouse. It's a period piece, so the N word is used pretty frequently. That's how people talked back then. And we had a talkback session, and there was a person there who was saying, I really took exception to you guys using the N word as often as you did, blah, 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 blah. I think that's something that should be cut from the play. And I'm sitting here going, well, you can't cut that. You can't cut that. That's part of history there, you know? To skirt around that, to skate around it, to pretend it didn't happen, that to me is disingenuous, especially when Steinbeck, who was a champion for civil rights, was using that to show that as bad as these guys, these white guys have it, that are treated like crap, the black guy has it even
Or
worse.
slave labor almost.
The black guy isn't even allowed in the bunkhouse.
Mhm.
The black character, Crooks, has to sleep with the animals. That's how bad he has it.
And guys, you might not be as familiar with this, but like in the theater, the text is king. Like to change
100%.
punctuation is like a big deal. It's not like movies, TV show, unless it's like a Coen Brothers production.
Yeah.
Like, these guys will tell you like there's definitely room to change, modify, but in the theater, you don't change the text, especially, a classic like that. And
Yeah.
so that's interesting, Darren.
Yeah, it's so hard. I would never use that word. I just can't.
I know.
I honestly, I just can't go there. Not, I just, Tarantino, does it. I feel like I can't. I don't know why. I just, it's
And I
one of
think
those
that
things.
that's in communication with the communities that, are impacted by it. And I think there's this give and take, right? Like their content warnings really useful because there are people who live through these things and sometimes they really just want to be entertained. They don't want to have to relive a horrible moment in their life. So it's
Sure.
like I 100% agree on that.
Hey, I'm right there. I've owned a copy of Precious for 20 something years, and it's been on my shelf, and I've never said, "You know what I wanna watch tonight? Precious," 'cause I know
Okay.
roughly what
Yep.
Precious is. There's never been a time where I'm like, "I'm in the mood to just have my heart ripped out," and I get
Yeah.
that. I get that. We all get that. I've seen Schindler's List. I don't wanna see it again,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
there's a
and
lot of
it's
things
just
like that.
what an important movie. And 12 Days a Slave. I mean, like I cried after I saw that.
Yeah.
And I'm just so glad that that was made. That was whoa, you just see that movie. And yeah,
As academics, though, it's true. I think the truth always matters. And to
Yeah.
Derek's point, we cannot, whitewash history. You know what I mean?
it's such a disservice.
I think it does a disservice to the people that fought to change it, and it's a reminder of how things were.
But I mean, this is not a new concept either. I mean, this is there's always been this balance between art and commerce in this business. I
Yeah,
mean, even
that's
going
Mhm.
back to Tennessee Williams, I mean, and using the Glass Menagerie specifically, the character of Tom is clearly a gay character, and that is completely and totally whitewashed in the film version. In fact, it's kind of a happy ending in the film version, where in the
yeah.
play version, it's anything but happy. It's blow out your candles, Laura. Tom left the family and got the hell out of Dodge, and they're on their own to survive in a post-depression era in St. Louis. I mean, it's a very depressing ending. And Hollywood was like, maybe, flower that up a little bit. At the end of Streetcar, Stanley rapes Blanche. Well, that's not how it ends in the film. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
It's very interesting to see how much certain types of violence can be accepted and monetized and how much other forms of violence can't be talked about and
yeah.
can't be used as like, and I don't even want to call it entertainment. I want to call it creating stories for human connection, because I think that's what really good media does. That's why you guys put so much heart into Blood of Zeus, and you're pulling the Easter eggs from all the things that we as classicists loved. We as people who have watched a lot of films inspired by ancient Greece and Rome love. Like, it's just so fun when there's heart there to go with it.
Heart and truth at the core, at the base of it, like Derek was saying, it's the truth. If you're playing it truthfully, if you're writing it truthfully, it'll come across authentically. Does that make sense? What did you say?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
It stands the test of
Yeah,
time. I mean, and that's
Yeah.
it's. I literally went to go see a production of Hamlet last night, and the last 45 minutes was a rewrite of the fifth act by the playwright, but they're still calling it Hamlet. That is I'm not a purist. You know, I mean, hell, one of my favorite books of all time is John Updike's Gertrude and Claudius, which is a deconstruction of Hamlet. I love Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
I was
Dead.
about to say Rosencrantz.
Just
We should be
call it
doing that.
Hamlet.
Derek, we should do Rosencrantz and
Yes,
Guildenstern.
just don't call it
How
Hamlet.
cool would that be?
You know what I mean? You can call it whatever you want to, just don't call it Hamlet. I don't have a problem with you deconstructing Shakespeare. That's been done since the beginning of time, but don't call it Hamlet at that point in time. It's not Hamlet. When you're getting rid of certain dialogue, and when Polonius and Gertrude have an affair behind the scenes and Ophelia fakes her own death, I'm like, what the is this?
Oh, wow.
I'm glad y'all have the same issues we do sometimes with remakes.
I mean,
I was gonna say, wow, you sound just like me when I'm consuming modern romance media that's based on ancient myth and being like, what is this? This isn't right at all.
If it is truly a classic, it doesn't need to be modernized for an audience today to understand it. We don't have to incorporate TikToks into Shakespeare in order for Shakespeare to cross that generational divide. You know what I mean? Like, it's Shakespeare for a reason, because it has stood the test of time. And that's not to say that, I mean, look, any production of Shakespeare is going to have to be interpreted some way. You know what I mean? There's a million ways to interpret Hamlet. Is he insane, or is he pretending that he's insane? You know, that's the difference between, I think, reading Shakespeare or reading the classics, is that you can read it and go, there's 15 different ways that I could interpret this. There may be 100 different ways that it's interpreted. And you're capable, when you're reading it, of going, well, is it this or is it that? When you're doing a production of it, a choice has to be made, for better or worse. And so an audience who knows it isn't, I mean, you guys are never going to be satisfied seeing one of the classics, because
I think about that all the time.
Somebody's going to have to make a choice, and that choice is going to go in direct opposition to what you believe it to be. And so
Derek, did you play Hamlet crazy or acting crazy?
I had a teacher, so when I did it in college. We did 8 performances, and every night I got different notes. And so one night he was fully fucking insane, and then the next night he was putting on an antic disposition. And so I got to play it, because it was, a college production. I got to play it 4 or 5 different ways over the course of one, which was great. So I got to experiment with all of those.
Then, as a follow up on that, which was more fun?
I was just thinking that.
I think the antic disposition is more fun. The wink and a nod to the audience, like, I'm going to put one
that's
on.
That was my interpretation.
You know, when Hamlet's doing to be or not to be, he knows they're in the other room.
I mean, speaking of winks and nods, right? This show is full of them. But I mean, I don't know. I know Charley and Vlas, a lot of when we talk about your show, we talk about like, oh, that's a reference like you throw at Sparagmos. You mentioned bucket cults and Orphic mysteries or X and this, and they're that kind of Easter eggy breadcrumb sort of trail.
We also got our hero constellation from Disney's Hercules. So.
Oh, good. That was an inspiration. That was, I can't say that wasn't.
The 3 people that got it. Right?
Yeah.
Who doesn't get that?
Bubo the Owl, right? He makes an appearance. But there wasn't a question in there. I'm trying to sort of backpedal into making it one.
I have a question that pulls from a line that kind of brings us to this topic too, is like, you guys had, I think all of us agreed, maybe I'm wrong. Do we agree our favorite episode was with the Maenads and Sparagmos?
Yes.
And
I think I just went back over. That was our top, I think. For I mean, maybe some self-indulgent reasons, because
So fun.
You know what's funny though? I always think of that. Vlas wrote that because I had COVID in 2021. Yeah, I wrote the opening, but then Vlas took it home like the last, 15 pages.
We don't remember who wrote what, to be honest.
Yeah, but I always love that episode because we talked about a lot of things for that episode, but that's cool.
It turned out better than we thought.
Yeah.
What did you guys love about it?
Maenads in general, like, first of all, like, the other thing we say we love is, like, you guys do deep cuts that don't make it into popular media most of the time. So, like, Maenads, Spragmos, Thyrsis, all sorts of fun things. We wish Dionysus had shown up. I think that was our one note. It was like, please just have Dionysus come in.
We had a couple scenes.
Try not being a Greek scholar and having to read their scripts.
I would say, did you do any like you mentioned, like, you come in and we're like, I need to know X, Y, and Z about the character, but like, did you do any, or is it better to not, right? Because I guess like Heron wouldn't have researched Greek mythology. He wouldn't, he would know these people are, but
I had like my in-room dramaturgs anytime that Charley and Vlas, basically, anytime that I had a question about anything, they were capable of answering it in depth. So no, I did not do as much research as I probably should have.
Hey, Tom, these guys deserve credit because this is basically how we recorded the show for seasons 2 and 3. It was this kind of setup where we had a Zoom and then also a Skype, and then Meredith Lane, our casting director and voice director, would talk directly to them on like Skype, but then we were all together on a Zoom, and if they had questions, we could hear them and then relay it back. But it was kind of madness.
That was actually kind of annoying. Yeah. It was like I wanted to be able to talk to you guys, and I had to go through and I love Meredith, but I had to go through Meredith to get to you, and then I just text you guys. I'm like, what's going on?
Most sessions would come in with me like having written down a glossary of terms in my iPad, and before we started going, is it Hecate or Hecate?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And just going through and like words that I wasn't familiar with or wasn't 100% sure of, and making sure that I understand what the hell I'm saying. Going back, that may be the fourth thing I would add to my acting book. Know what you're saying.
Sometimes I have a student, I see them reading something, and I know a word's coming up or a name or a 10-syllable expression, and I just sort of wait to see see how they go over the hurdle. But I imagine because did you do stuff in studio or even just post lockdown? Do you have like home recording studios now set up? Or
yeah, I mean, mine's literally like right behind me. You can see my mic and my little setup right there.
Yeah, I think most actors that do voice work saw the writing on the wall after COVID hit, and we're like, hey, if our film careers are about to shut down, I should be able to record from home. That's what we ended up doing. The first season we did in person. I didn't get to work with Derek, but I did work with Fred Tatasciore and Claudia directly, and that's the best. And I remember thinking, like, I love this. This was great. Yeah, he wasn't Hades yet. Oh, he was. He had the one line at the end of the first season.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I remember thinking, this is great. I love this. I love hanging out with actors. And then by the second season, I'm like, I guess I'm doing this from my home here by myself and trying to get through to Charley and Vlas. That was what it was like.
Yeah. But, it makes what they do even that much for us. It makes it even more remarkable because when you're across from another actor, you can work off that. You have something that you can build off of. You can, and they're just doing it in this vacuum. So we're always amazed by, how they're able to do that and how the performances are so spot on and awesome. It's a true testament because there's also another whole point of it with voice acting is that it's not like you can get like the reaction in their eyes or their face. It has to come out in their voice. And that's another whole talent and art that goes into the performance. And I don't know how they do it.
I'm glad you guys love the Cult of Dionysus stuff because what's interesting, we try and take our families to Greece whenever we can. There was a big long break during COVID, but where the Cult of Dionysus used to meet, when we were there, the locals were telling me like, no, this place is cursed. Like we feel it's cursed. I was like, there was a train crash nearby and it's because the Cult of Dionysus. And like that made me read into all of this stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And like, let's put this in the show. So, it's just that the culture is very rich. We always just say we stand on the shoulders of of Greece's history. But I'm glad you guys like that. And then just because this Easter egg has nothing to do with Greek mythology, in that whole hallucination sequence, when Heron sees the evil version of himself, that's a callback to Zelda: A Link to the Past, the second Zelda,
Right.
when you have to fight Dark Link. I know you guys do some gaming on here, so I just thought I would throw that out there.
I think that's so cool, though, that because this is how myth works. It's just stories that were told years and years ago. And now you go, oh, well, that's the official myth of such and such. And it's like, there's no real official myth.
Nope.
It's literally a myth. And so I think it's so cool that you can incorporate Bobo the Owl, and then 20 years later, now he's part of that myth. And maybe 50 years from now, Heron and Seraphim are just part of the Greek mythology that's out there, It's cool to think about that.
That's why I had the question of this line from that episode, because I'm like, I don't think either of the brothers feels this way. But Orpheus asks a riddle, "What do I fear?" And Alexia's answers, "You fear to hear the music of others. It would influence your own, taint it." And I'm like, y'all, where'd that come from? Because I don't think you feel that way.
Oh, but that's great. That was I'm trying to remember if it was Beethoven or Mozart. It was one of those guys. And that was actually a quote that they had said. And I'm like, oh, that's
They didn't want to hear anyone else's music.
Because they felt they would ruin their own. And that it requires that singular focus and that sacrifice, to sacrifice everything for your gift. And this whole idea of capturing the divine, that's what Michelangelo, someone asked him, what was the inspiration for David? What were you trying to do? And he said, trying to capture the divine. And then the other part that's interesting with both of those, Leonard Bernstein talks about this with Beethoven, and Beethoven was a master at whenever you heard anything that he composed, the next note was exactly the note it had to be. It was as if he had a line to heaven, and he was communicated that's the next note that it has to be. But if you ever looked into Beethoven's apartment, you would see papers and you'd see him scratching things out. He wrote an ending to one of his symphony a million times. He thought one was too short, one was too long, then it'd be even shorter. But he always ended up getting there. But that process made me feel, and Michelangelo too, he goes, if you saw how hard I worked to produce this,
you'd say
you wouldn't think
you'd say it wasn't worth it. You would say it wasn't worth it. That's what he said.
So that made me feel better because we're fucking nuts sometimes. We're and we're there was one. This is a funny story. On our first feature that we made in a little independent film that got into the AFI Film Festival, and we were working with a post-production guy, and we were doing the credits, and we're like, oh, that letter needs to fade up a little bit slower, and it's a little too big. And the guy was looking at us, he's like, Jesus effing right. You guys are out of your effing mind. But how big and how long that little that matters to us. So I don't know, and there's always a lot of hard work, involved.
It's one of the worst things that's happened as a result of the business kind of changing due to COVID is now actors are doing self-tapes. I mean, one of my backdrops is here. I've got 16 different backdrops that I use depending on what I think tonally it is. And this is a problem that I have is I can get a little fucking crazy. And instead of doing 1 or 2 takes and sending it in, I'll do 30. Mm-hmm. It's like, dude, you got it. Move on.
Bro, we are the exact opposite. I literally sit down. I'll do 1 take and send it. I don't even watch it. I'm like, good, got it, send it. And those are the ones I book. The ones that I do 30, I never book.
Yeah.
One of my comfort watches is The Simpsons, and yesterday I watched the episode where Lisa is trying to record lines for a new doll, and she's going over and editing in the studio, and the guy behind the
bada boom, bada bing, I'm done.
Krusty comes in, he's like, yeah, here I am, Krusty the doll, haha, all right, bye. And then
that's 100% how I work.
And it's funny because on set, I'm that way. I feel like I'm that way. I'm not the guy who's like, I need another take. Yeah.
It's because you have your own control over it.
Devices, I'll go crazy. Yeah.
Oh, so is it different when it's you versus the director? I don't know if anyone's worked with David Fincher or anything, but I hear that can be shoots going long into the night. But,
yeah, I think that would drive me nuts because look, at the end of the day, I think most actors are just eager to please. And so if we're doing 30 takes in a row, about 2 takes into it, I'm going, what am I doing wrong? if we're having to do this?
Mhm.
What am I
Yeah.
not giving him? What is he not getting out of this performance right now? And then you get self-conscious, and then I don't know. I think if you know going into it that that's how that person works, then you can have a little bit. There's a little bit of forgiveness for yourself if you just know that. I mean, I remember I had to do a. Do you guys know what ADR is?
Yeah.
Okay, so I had to do an
Voiceover.
ADR session. So, sometimes you'll muffle your microphone on when you're doing an on-camera thing, and so you have to go in and re-record some dialogue. And it was like one line of dialogue, and this ADR session took like 20 minutes when they usually take like two, and it was one line where I was like, yeah, let him go. Yeah, let him go. Yeah, let him go. Yeah, let him go. And it comes you say it so many times over that it starts to lose any meaning at all. And when
Yep.
Mhm.
we got done, I was like, "What the is going on right now?" And the sound engineer comes out and he goes, "Hey, just FYI," he goes, "They do that with everybody. They just wanna make sure that they've got a million different takes that they can play with." And I'm like, "Okay," because I started to lose my mind thinking like, how am I doing this wrong? When we actually did it on the day, I think I only did 2 takes. Now we're
Yeah.
doing 40 in ADR? Like, this is insanity.
There's so much to unpack there, though. We always make it a point, and sometimes I feel like we don't do it enough, where we tell Meredith, make sure you tell the actors they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Because I agree that you don't want them to become self-conscious and in their head. And you guys are always like,
And they're giving us gold. And you're like,
Yes.
oh, that was great.
but they don't
was
see
great.
it because they're not there. And
Yeah.
everyone, if they were seeing like how the people respond, I think it would help them. But they're just in their little booth, like right there in Derek's little corner of the room. Like he has no idea that we're really enjoying what he's doing. The same thing with Elias. So it's very important to have the voice director tell them that. The other thing is, I remember working on a commercial and I was a production assistant, and the director just kept having the actors say things because the agency, which is really the ones that control everything, they thought, oh, look at the director. He's doing such a great job. He's giving us so much to work with.
So many colors.
And I'm like, are you effing kidding me? He's like, say it like a cow. And like, what does that even mean? Like, I felt so bad for the actors, but the director was like, in the agency's eyes, doing his job. And I'm like, this is madness. We don't need 50 takes of this. So
There was a great piece of advice I got when I was first starting out. And so when you come from academia, you get feedback on everything. I'm sure Elias can vouch for me on this or vouch with me on this. But like when you're doing a production in college, the other students critique your performance. The other students are seeing your performance. Every one of your professors talks to you about your performance. You're getting constant feedback on this performance. You learn very well, what critiques to accept and what is just some asshole that hates you and he's giving you this critique. So you learn what to accept and what not to accept. And then you get into the real world and no one tells you shit. And I remember one of my first professional jobs was playing Florizel in the Winter's Tale. We were 3 weeks into the rehearsal and the director hadn't said a word to me. And one day we're leaving the rehearsal space at the same time. We're both walking out of the theater at the same time. She's an old Jewish woman named Irene Lewis from Brooklyn. And she goes, "Hey, Flo." And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "You're doing a good job." That was the only note I got on that show. And as a young actor who's just starting out, you're like, am I shitting the bed? Are they going to fire me? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
No one's telling me anything. But a great note that I got from one of the other actors that I was working with on that show, a Tony Award winner named Jefferson Mays. I'm going to name drop here. But Jefferson goes, directors like to direct. Don't ask them. So if they're not giving you direction, don't ask for it.
Yeah.
It means
Right,
you're
yeah.
doing a
That's the
good
biggest
job.
note I got. It was
Yeah.
if nobody's talking to you and telling you anything, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Like you're doing your job.
Yeah.
I feel that way about teaching sometimes, where I'm like, I feel like someone should come in and say something. Like I'm just
Yeah.
like I'm just allowed to say whatever to these people. No one's checking me on this. Yeah.
it's true. If a teacher's doing a good job, like, yeah, you're just listening and you're like, you're right. I never thought of that.
Every time you work for Charley and Vlas, though, it's like the minute you get done with a session, you've got a text message about how great you were, and you're driving home
Yeah,
going,
that's
"Hey,
true.
I crushed that." This is, you're feeling, as I said, 10 feet tall and bulletproof.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like we're getting great performances. You're like, thank God they killed it. They just made this scene better. They sold something we're not sure works sometimes. Great. That delivery was great. So it's like we mean it when we send it because it's true.
You earned our respect. Like, that's not easy to do. When people do it, and they're like, oh yeah, and then they need to know that they did it and that they did a great job.
Yeah. No, I think that there's something to that, because I do think that the adverse of that, because I've also worked with directors where it's 24/7 sarcasm. The only time that they're ever talking to you is when it's something negative that well, that sucked, you know. Jesus Christ, why did I hire this guy? I've worked with those guys as well. You know what I mean? Where it's just the sarcasm 24/7, and it starts to wear on you a little bit. Or they're just, I've also I worked one of my first jobs out of college. I got a gig. It was my first equity job. And it was very clear that I was not this director's choice. I was kind of forced on him by the artistic director of the theater company, who really liked me. And the director kind of got stuck with me. And so it was kind of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And you're now sitting here going, there's really nothing I can do to make this guy happy. He's never going to enjoy my performance. He's never going to like me as an actor. And you just got to kind of roll with the punches and keep moving.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on this idea of some similarities that we see between us, as academics, and you guys as creators. And like since we've talked about Blood of Zeus in 2020, there's been so much Greek myth retellings popping up in popular media that have been like amazing for the most part. We've got Chaos, Percy Jackson, The Return, Epic the Musical, Hades, Hades 2, countless books
Assassin's
and
Creed,
webcomics. Assassin's Creed, yeah, can't forget
Elias
about
is
that
in
one.
that.
Yeah,
Elias
he
does
just
a
turned
bunch
off
of
his
that.
camera.
Yeah, I was about to say, does Elias realize that his Leonidas character is also married to a Gorgo
That's true.
in
Yeah, no, I
Assassin's
knew that.
Creed?
Yep.
Because that's Gorgo's the queen of Sparta. It's his wife. So it's like, fun connection there.
I
The
was
funny is, do
literally
you guys
playing
remember,
Fortnite.
Vlas and Charlie, do you remember that I did that game, Phoenix Rising? And then we did a
Yeah,
Blood of Zeus kind of they did
they
like a
did a
Blood of Zeus.
DLC. They did a
Yeah.
download.
The
Yeah.
funniest thing about that, I don't know if you remember that, but the original title for Blood of Zeus was Gods and Heroes.
Yeah.
And the original title for Phoenix Rising was Gods and Monsters. And both of them were changed.
Because I can say to people, oh, I'm in this show called Blood of Zeus. I'm the Blood of Zeus.
Well, and of course, we have Christopher Nolan's announcement of his version of the Odyssey that's going to get out next year. That we
With
are,
not a single Greek in the cast.
yeah. Okay. We all have qualms for different reasons.
Wait, Tom Holland isn't Greek?
You know what? It just goes to show like how popular these stories are right now. But on the other side of it, even with the strong interest in Greek myth, history, and culture, humanities and classics are disappearing from academia, and AI is being maliciously used to displace writers, artists, and creators who are retelling those stories. So my big question is, how can we support each other to show the value of learning about the past and maintaining the humanity of the stories that we've been telling for centuries? Like, it seems like we're in such different worlds, but at the same time, we're struggling with a lot of similar things.
I was going to say this before when we were talking about the history, is we cannot forget history. And I cannot let my kids forget history. I show them history. Like my son really likes history, and I'm really happy with that, because I'll sit down and I'll go over all the Greek. My dad just sent me I should show this to you guys, a beautiful graphic novel of the Iliad. Like the Iliad turned into a comic. And it's great because I sit down with my son. I'm like, let's go over this. I know that's not specifically history, but it's history and mythology. But I showed, like the other day, I showed him just scenes from Last of the Mohicans. I just wanted him to see this was the Revolutionary War, right? And
Early America.
Yeah, early America. And I was just trying to remember the other thing I showed him, but it doesn't matter. But I'm showing my daughter, like, we're going to sit down, we're going to watch Schindler's List, because I want to make sure that history is not forgotten. And that's, I think, how you solve it. Is it's not just the stories, but you got to make sure history is, because then those stories about that history, which is what people will flock to.
But I was going to say that there's something that's kind of interesting that I've kind of noticed recently. And I was having this conversation with some friends that are all, theater nerds like myself. I do, in some respects, think that there's a novelty that I think we're going to see with theater, and maybe a resurgence of an interest in theater is a direct result of the TikTok revolution, of AI, of nothing necessarily being real. Everything's so big. So there's something kind of intangible about a live performance. You can't repeat it. You can't replicate it. It's actual human interaction. I think, unfortunately, film and television may wind up going the route of radio. I don't think it's ever going to go away completely, but I do think, as far as, I don't think it's going to dominate the landscape 50 years from now the way that it has for the past 100. I think that may just be the case, the same way that books don't dominate the way they did 200 years ago. I don't think they're going anywhere. There's always going to be a place for them. It may not be the most dominant form of entertainment or media for people moving
You just got
forward.
to do it in 3-minute intervals, your live performance.
Yeah. Hamlet in 300 acts.
I think it's important, and this is something that has to be kind of expressed, and I think is lost because, sometimes now we know some college administrators, it's all about like, well, what majors have the highest return on investment and what are drawing the most applications? And I think that's completely the wrong way to view academia and to view higher education. Stories and classic stories shape our culture. Our culture is a product of the stories we share and the values embedded in those stories.
Yeah.
And so when we start to devalue that, we start to lose sense of, people don't do things. We believe in the hero's journey because there's been thousands of stories about this, and doing what's right and rising up against it. And because Luke trusts the Force, we trust that we have to do what's good for the greater good. It might sound silly, but it's really important. And the stories we share and the stories we tell are what shapes society. So yes, obviously it doesn't have the tangible application as building a bridge, but where we want to build bridges to and where we want to go metaphorically as a culture, it's based on these stories. So studying these stories and sharing these stories is, I think, of the utmost importance, because then it's through those stories. Listen, I love history. We all love history. I think everybody on this call loves history. Watching Schindler's List was transformative, that people could do this, that this level of atrocity could happen. I don't care how many books I have, it will not have the same impact as, oh my God, Ben Kingsley holding up the list and saying, everywhere around the margins of this is the abyss, is death. This is what this man's choice to save these names saved generations. Yes, I understand what the Holocaust is intellectually, but seeing that made the difference. Watching Glory made the difference. Oh my God! Wow,
my favorite movie of all time.
It's top 5 for me, Elias. We've talked about this before. Like, so the stories reading Antigone, being like, oh my God, and listen, I've always loved strong Greek women. Like, here she is, she's standing up to her brother, the king. Great. Like, reading those stories matter, and we cannot discount them. My whole thing is that, like, some of these businesses are getting constructed on paradigms that are not useful to society. In college, there's way too many administrators. Professors still get paid like shit, but college keeps getting more expensive. I need someone to explain that to me. That's just not, I was an econ major at Swarthmore. That doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like, why is the thing that people are coming for, this education from these professors, they're not getting paid more, but the cost is going up? That doesn't make sense. In our business, more of the Silicon Valley tech mentality is being brought, and they're squeezing the creatives. And that's not good for our business. And so I think that we have to just remind people how important storytelling is. And now I'll get off my soapbox and make sure that the business is set up in a way where it's good for the ecosystem, because I think we're squeezing it the wrong way.
I didn't tell them that you guys are going into administration. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
I'm sorry. But that's my version.
We wanted the soapbox because we're all feeling the pain. So, yeah. So, our episode discussing Blood of Zeus season 3 is going to come out tomorrow. It's already out for people listening to this episode. And we went into it. First of all, I love all of the support that your guys' fans you guys have worked so hard to connect with your fans, and, like, the response to season 3 has been amazing from what we've seen. I think Colin and I have been too jaded and seen too much media, so we are a little more critical of certain things, but we also came in at the understanding that what was supposed to be 5 seasons with like, a lot of heart in each storyline with focused themes, all of a sudden got crunched into 1 season.
Not even into one season, into one episode. They told us while we were making 308, this is going to be the end. So we're like, well,
Ouch.
okay.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense for
Yeah.
308 then.
They were
And
always in it. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's like, I've already had a chance to talk to you guys a little bit of, like, how disheartened you were to have to cut some stories, cut some secondary characters' development out for the sake of wrapping up the story overall, and I really do think the overall story was wrapped up really nicely. But can you tell us about some of the frustrations of having to make that change, and what characters we might get to see in the future still if my theoretical assumption is correct and Gorgo is actually Medusa and we get Blood of Medusa, so
And let us know if we need to go back and bleep all that out or anything. Can't be spilling trade secrets.
That was, one of the things Vlas and I would always try and do is wherever we were going to go with the story, try and kind of seed it in earlier seasons. So we introduce Hades in season 1, then we see him. In season 2, we show the story of Kronos, we show Typhon, and then we see them in season 3. Obviously, the priestess's backstory was that she was going to be a Gorgon that could, hulk out and become a Gorgon to get revenge and kind of make things right. And that was going to be the whole backstory there. Part of it is what we always say is that, listen, when you're a writer and you're a professional writer working the WGA, you have to understand whatever work you do, there'll always be parameters outside of your control. If you want what you write to remain exactly that, just go write a blog. Because in this business, there's going to be compromise. You have to be a pro, So they told us while we were doing that, we had to wrap it up. So we wanted to at least give a fitting kind of end to the Heron and Seraphim story. The one thing that kills me, and I think I might have mentioned this to you, is that, we had to keep cutting stuff for time. At Comic-Con, guys, we're going to show a bunch of cut scenes, I think, to the audience. But one scene that we didn't even get to do that we had wanted to do was that we said, like, for us, we love Hades and Persephone. We love that storyline. And what we wanted to do is one thing, we used to have a scene where you see Seraphim and Gorgo, they're together. And then we should have had Derek say that when he's in the Elysian Fields to his mom, I have a surprise for you, a visitor, because Seraphim's just visiting there.
Okay.
But then after that scene and after the credits, we wanted to have a scene where we go back to Hades. The boulder is rolled away. He's in the underground. He wakes up his kids, and he says, "Come on, we have to go see to your mother." And his son Zagor says, "Where is she? Is she okay?" And he says, "When two souls are meant to be together, nothing can keep them apart." And that, of course, again, he's going to go save her. But again, we were cutting stuff. And we couldn't ask for like an additional, because it's all about how much time you animate. So listen, you can always complain. And some of us, last night, we've talked about, should we even say this to people? Is it better just to say it is what it is? But that's what happened. And we just did the best we could.
But the ending works because even though he's visiting and that wasn't made clear, the end of the 5 seasons, he was going to end up there.
That was what we always
exactly.
He was going to always be in Elysium. And that feels like where that should go. So I think that landed for people, whether they realized he was there visiting or not. Eventually, he was going to get there. And by this point, even by season 3, we empathize with what's happened to Seraphim. Now, we would have empathized with him more, and we would have seen more growth in seasons 4 and seasons 5. Yes, and we would have seen even the brothers come together even more, because Heron was always going to die, and he was always going to, point and say, that guy, Seraphim, that's the chosen one. That was always going to happen.
But Heron wasn't going to die at the end of season 3.
Exactly.
They weren't going to defeat the Titans at the end of season 3. That was meant to be a 2-season kind of battle.
Yeah. So that got compressed. And then obviously some storylines. Charley thought of the whole thing for Hades and Persephone. That would have been beautiful. And that's something I think, fans wanted. So we did the best with what we had. And the biggest challenge has always been that we have 22 pages, 20 pages, and that's limited real estate. And because it's so limited, you don't get to spend as much time as you want with the other characters. You have to say, okay, who are the main characters? We have to make certain that we land their, journeys, their story arcs, and then whatever else we have left over, we're going to give it to the other characters. And because sometimes people say, well, we would have liked to know more about this character. There was a lot of stuff that just didn't make it into the final show because it just wasn't the real estate and there wasn't really the budget for it. And even though we're very grateful for the budget that we got, at the end of the day, you do have parameters that you have to work within.
Yeah.
And it's almost a misnomer to say that Elias and I are like the lead and the second lead, because this really is an ensemble piece. I mean, across the board. I mean, and all the stories are
Everyone's
compelling, and all the characters are well rounded. So yeah, I mean, there are full episodes I'm not in.
We
because there's
noticed.
the story being told.
Not in a bad way, just in a
You guys are laughing.
it would have worked
those were the
great
best. Come on.
across a few seasons.
All the kids need to be saying, when Heron comes on, all the kids say, yeah. And when Heron's not there, they got to be saying, where's Heron?
Exactly. Yeah. That's right. Everybody loves
My
Heron.
students, that's a Simpsons rep.
It's another Simpsons reference.
But anyways, on that note, to kind of just wrap us out and sort of take us to Elysium and beyond, I wanted to ask just everybody involved what the sort of highlight for you, either whether that's sort of a moment from the show or a character or even a line or a design or anything like that, like, where it comes up on screen or you see it on the page and you're like, yeah.
Well, for me, it was definitely when I heard that we were getting a second and third. At the time, we were told we were getting a second and third, right away.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, great, that's amazing. This is where I want Seraphim to go. I didn't tell anybody that, but I was thinking, like, this is what I would like. I'd like this. Everybody wanted a redemption arc. I think we all wanted that, but it was, I wanted a more human thing. I wanted to try different kind of, I wanted to feel his remorse eventually. I wanted him to get remorse, and everything I wanted is exactly what happened. And I remember reading the scripts going, yes, oh my God, I'm going to get to do exactly what I wanted to do with this. And then him changing from his, I guess, regular form to the human form, from the demon form to the human form. And then I was like, oh, how am I going to do this vocally? And I did very subtle things vocally to do that. And I remember just seeing it all put together and going, oh man, I remember sitting down watching, I think it was that episode where he goes to the graveyard and he's about to kill Heron and then sees who he's talking to and stops. That episode, I remember thinking, I did it. Not I did it, but I got it, is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. I got what I wanted. That's exactly what I got. I wanted this, and that's exactly where I got. And I remember thinking I could do 10 more seasons of this, but I was pretty happy of where I remember that particular episode. I don't remember when or where I watched it. It was before it aired. But I remember getting back to you guys and going, oh man, this is exactly what I was hoping we were going to be able to do. So that was the big one for me.
I think it's two for me. Number one, it's just getting the job. Getting the job is always the big victory in and of itself. Doing the job is always fantastic. But then, especially with voice work, because you really don't know what it's going to look like when you finally get to see all of the elements incorporated and put together and you go, oh, dude, this is good. Yeah, it's that moment, I think. So for me, it's getting to see that first episode and realizing what we had, which I guess Charley and Vlas probably knew for a while what we had, but as an actor, and especially as a voice actor, you don't necessarily know what this is until all the pieces are put together,
Yeah.
We've been working in film and obviously in the live action space. So it was the first time where we were able to take something from inception of idea and then see it the whole way through and be able to weigh in. And features, the director is king, the writers get rewritten, they get discarded, what have you. In the television side, the writer is for lack of a better word, king. And again, for better for worse, we were able to tell the story that we wanted to tell. And then to have that story move us emotionally and then get the affirmation by seeing it touch an audience emotionally and seeing an audience, be moved by it and embrace it and love it. And that was very, very gratifying. And in addition to that, Charlie had mentioned, because he runs a social site, there was a guy who had cancer and he watched the show and he said that it helped him while he was going through those various treatments, and it was something for him to look forward to. So when you hear stories like that and you find out that it actually made someone's life a little bit better, a little bit easier, even if it just was something that made him forget about the problems he was facing, during a certain period of time, that just felt really good and very rewarding. And there was also the affirmation, because sometimes you think, well, maybe we're delusional, maybe no one will like this, maybe, but like we felt like after that first season, when we got those performances and the music and everything came together, we felt that we had something that was pretty good, and we were excited to share it with the world. And thankfully, the response was one that was very welcoming and very enthusiastic. So that felt good on a creative level, because again, we're not completely delusional.
I'll say the one moment that I remember vividly, because I remember sitting and watching it on my computer. This was a series of meetings with Sylvester Stallone back in 2007 for a project we were going to work with him on. And we had told him how much we had loved Rocky and how like he loses by winning, and how the end, it's one of those perfect endings where everything culminates to a moment. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, I got it my first time out and I've been chasing it ever since. And he basically was like, he never got like an ending as great as his first movie. And I was like, oh, wow. Because like, there's a lot of scripts we've written that I think are very strong that haven't got produced on the feature side. And we're kind of like, you always wonder, like, are we ever going to get one that it comes out and it turns out the way we hope and we get what we want? And I remember we had worked with our season 1 director, Sean, on the end of season 1. And when Heron looks up and his eyes go electric and he electrocutes Seraphim, I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, that works. That's great. Like, we got an ending where I can say, like, I'm happy with how it ended. And it all kind of worked. And I was like, okay, at least we got one. We got one where, it turned out the way we hoped, and just being so happy that it turned out that way.
Excellent.
I just want to piggyback on what you guys were saying earlier about
it's the word of the day.
Yeah, he's doing it.
Piggyback is the word of the day. But it really is true. When you're doing these shows, I think there's this idea that because it's Hollywood or because it's a big production or something, that the reality is it still feels like you're doing theater in somebody's basement half the time. A lot of this takes place in a little studio, and it feels like you're in a void, and there's not an audience necessarily. You're not getting feedback from fans when you're starting out, so you don't really know how it's going to affect people. And it reminds me of, I was doing the show Friday Night Lights years ago, and I've told you guys this story before, but we were walking back from craft services one day, Taylor Kitsch and I, and he goes, and we had a big scene that we were about to shoot, and he goes, I'm going to do a real bad Canadian accent here, so don't get pissed at me, Elias. But he goes, hey, don't this up. People actually watch this show. And it's one of these moments that just makes me giggle, but at the same time, when you're doing it, it just feels like you're doing a little production for you and your friends. The idea that all these people's lives are kind of affected by it, or that we're even doing an interview, or that you guys talk about this on a intellectual level, it's flattering, and it's outside of that realm of what you're capable of kind of even imagining that the show is, because to us it still feels like this little church play, or this little play that we're doing in the basement of a church. It doesn't even feel real when people say, oh, 1 million people saw this, or that doesn't, you can't even really wrap your head around.
18 million first month. Let's get it numbers right.
Yeah, first season, 18 million. Only one other animated show's ever done more. So
crazy. Yeah, and it's just amazing that you can't wrap your head around that. It's not, when you come from a theater background, you're like, oh, I performed in front of 2,000 people once. What's 2,000 compared to 18 million,
I performed in front of 3 people once. It was a disaster.
I've done that too. I can tell you there's a big, I can wrap my head around that. But you have more people in the cast than you do in the audience. That's a problem. And
that's the worst.
I've done those before.
Well,
one was his wife.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, God.
Well, I know we're trying to wrap up, but really quickly before we do, I just wanted to say how really special it's been for me. I mean, I'm not an official host of this show, but having sort of gotten to watch Blood of Zeus develop over the last 4 or 5 years now. And one of the things we talk about in the episode that will be airing shortly or has aired already, depending on when you are experiencing this, is
How
the
you move
importance
through
of
time,
community.
that kind of thing.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, and is the importance of community. And it's really special to see the way that you four, and it sounds like everyone else that's been involved, have developed this community alongside it, and how important and meaningful that has been for all four of you. And I just wanted to say that that's really special to see for me as someone who doesn't always think about everything that goes in on your side of things. So I figured it would be worth me putting that out there for the four of you.
We appreciate it because the only reason we got to do seasons 2 and 3 are because people came out and supported it. And so they have our eternal gratitude. So, and they're the ones that are championing it and reposting it and spreading the word. You know, Netflix is all about their algorithm, but I still think word of mouth still helps. So we're appreciative of the community. And also, too, like, people love Greek mythology. We love Greek mythology. That's why we wrote this. And so, like, there are people. So,
but we like Canadians too. So
that's why you should. Who doesn't like it? Aside from Donald Trump, who doesn't like Canadians?
And we especially like Greek Canadians, like Elias and Chris D, who are part of our class.
Great guy.
Well, man, we have so many people to thank today. First, we want to thank Derek Phillips and Elias Toufexis for sharing their time and their wonderful voices with both us and our listeners. It's such a pleasure to have you both join us this evening, and we look forward to seeing or hearing what's next for you. If people want to follow you and your work, where should they go find you guys?
For me, it's any social, just my name. Just my name on any social, you'll find it. Good luck spelling it.
Not hard for someone who studies the classics, just saying. Another reason to go sign up.
Somebody grab Derek Phillips first. So I am _ Derek Phillips at Instagram. Is it at Instagram? That's my Instagram handle. _ Derek Phillips.
And then Charley and Vlas, as always, thank you so much for today's show, as well as all the support you've given our podcast over the years. It's like, it feels full circle for us in a lot of ways too. Your stories based in Greek myth never fail to delight us, and we're really looking forward to what you guys do next. So if people want to stay informed about your upcoming projects, where should they go, and what can they do to help support those projects?
You know what? We're not big social media guys, but we do run the Blood of Zeus Twitter and Instagram account. Anything you send us there, we'll see. And then, we'll post a little update for what's next. We are writing a comic right now that we're really excited about called Ink. That'll be in Heavy Metal Magazine in July, the first issue. It's a cool story. And, hopefully we'll be able to get another show together, but it's a very strange time in the business. The guys will tell you. People are very scared of anything that doesn't have a built-in audience or isn't kind of quote-unquote branded intellectual property. Now it's not, the catchphrase isn't just intellectual property, it has to be branded intellectual property with an active community. Zoe, that's the key word. You can't just do the Fall Guy because that IP isn't branded and have an active community. And so it's always this word salad that just like, didn't you get in this business to tell stories? But but you can always, we're always responding there, and we have our own personal Twitters, but we don't really post that much.
Updates will be on the Blood of Zeus Instagram and on X, and we want to thank you guys. Thank you for being fans, champions of the show. We really appreciate it. We want to thank obviously Derek and Elias. We can't say enough how much we appreciate the great work they did and how blessed we feel to have had them be part of the show. And then we want to thank our fans. As Charley mentioned, the only reason the show exists, or existed for 3 seasons was we had great fans. And we're glad that it was well received. That makes us feel good,
And to piggyback off of that, I'm just kidding.
Well, I'll piggyback off it because I haven't had a chance to say the phrase yet. Thank you, Zoe, for coming in to Elijah's Shoes and being a wonderful host for our guests today as well. We're glad you got to join us tonight. And finally, special thanks to all of you listeners. We could not produce episodes like this without your support. And because this is a special episode, we want to give a shout out to two of our most engaged listeners, Tommy and Serena. So this one's for you guys. Thank you both for all your support and encouragement. And like them, you can help support the podcast by rating, commenting, and subscribing to the show. You can do similar things for Blood of Zeus by going and watching it and double liking it and spreading the word. So be sure to do that. Follow us at movieswedig.com or on our socials at movieswedig. And we'll see you in the next life, I guess. The next project, at least. So thanks again, and bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
This podcast is produced by your hosts, Colin McCormick and Christy Vogler. Movies We Dig is part of the Memory Collective, creators and educators dedicated to sharing knowledge that is accessible, contextualized, socially conscious, and inclusive. To learn more about the Memory Collective, be sure to check out the website collectivemem.com.